The night was supposed to end with vows echoing in our ears and promises settling into our bones, but instead, it began with a secret that would follow me for years, a secret born on a quiet balcony under borrowed stars, while the music of our wedding still throbbed through the walls behind me. I remember the weight of my dress, the way it pressed against my ribs as if it knew I was already struggling to breathe. The reception had blurred into laughter and clinking glasses, into hands pulling me from one congratulation to the next. I kept smiling, because that's what a bride does. My husband, newly my husband, stood 10 feet away, laughing with his cousins, his eyes shining with a kind of certainty I didn't share. I loved him, or at least I believed I did, but love that night felt like a room without windows. When I slipped away to the balcony for air, I told myself it was harmless. Just a moment to steady my heart. He followed me without asking. Not my husband, someone else. A familiar face from a past I thought I'd outgrown. He didn't touch me at first. He just leaned on the railing and said my name the way he used to, like it meant something unfinished. The city lights shimmered below, and for a second, the world felt paused. He asked if I was happy. I said yes too quickly. He smiled like he knew better. What happened next wasn't fireworks or passion the way movies sell it, it was confusion and fear wrapped in the comfort of recognition. I crossed a line I had promised myself I never would. It took less than a minute, and it changed everything. I went back inside with the echo of it ringing in my ears. My husband kissed my cheek, proud and glowing, and I felt like a stranger wearing someone else's life. That night, lying beside him, I stared at the ceiling and listened to his breathing. I told myself it was a mistake, that mistakes don't define us. But secrets are heavy, and they don't stay quiet forever. The days that followed were a performance. Thank you cards, unpacking gifts, smiling photos framed on the walls. My husband talked about the future with a confidence that made my chest ache. Trips we'd take, children we might have, a home we'd build. I nodded and added my agreement where it fit. Inside, guilt grew teeth. I avoided mirrors because the woman looking back at me felt dishonest. I replayed the balcony over and over, wishing I could step out of my own skin and warn myself. But time only moves one way. The first challenge wasn't temptation, it was silence. Carrying the truth alone felt like drowning slowly. I convinced myself that confession would destroy him, that staying quiet was an act of love. That lie became my refuge. Yet every kindness from him cut deeper. When he trusted me with his fears, when he defended me to his family, when he reached for my hand in public, the secret pulsed between us like a third heartbeat. Months passed. The man from the balcony tried to reach out once, then again. I didn't respond. I knew enough to understand that closure with him would only open the wound wider. Still, the damage had been done, and it lived inside me. One night, my husband asked why I'd been distant. His voice wasn't angry, just worried. Something in me cracked. I almost told him. Almost. Instead, I said I was tired. He pulled me close and said we'd figure it out together. I cried into his shoulder for a reason he didn't know. The truth came out not with drama, but with exhaustion. I couldn't keep holding it. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the ordinary kind of evening that makes a life. I told him there was something I needed to say, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I told him about the balcony. I didn't soften it. I didn't excuse it. I told him because he deserved the truth more than I deserved. Comfort. Silence swallowed the room. His face changed in ways I didn't know were possible, hurt folding into disbelief, disbelief hardening into grief. He asked questions I answered through tears. He stood up and walked out, and the door closing felt final. That night, I learned that consequences don't shout, they settle in quietly and refuse to leave. The weeks after were the hardest of my life. He stayed with his brother. Friends chose sides without asking for the full story. I went to therapy alone, not to fix the marriage, but to face myself. I had to understand why I'd been so afraid of the life I chose that I'd risked it all in a moment of weakness. The answer wasn't flattering. I was afraid of being seen too clearly. I was afraid of commitment because it asks you to stop keeping exits open. I had mistaken familiarity for safety and secrecy for control. When he agreed to meet me, I didn't hope for forgiveness. I hoped for honesty. We talked for hours. He said trust doesn't break loudly, it erodes. He said he didn't know if he could rebuild it. I told him I would accept whatever he decided, and I meant it. Love, I learned, isn't proven by promises but by accountability. We tried counseling together. Some days were raw and hopeless. Some days offered small light, shared laughter at a memory, a hand held without flinching. Rebuilding wasn't romantic. It was repetitive and humbling. I learned to listen without defending myself. He learned to say when the pain returned. Progress didn't mean forgetting, it meant choosing honesty over comfort, again and again. Whether a marriage survives betrayal isn't a guarantee. Ours didn't magically heal, but it grew honest. We chose to keep walking together, knowing the scar would always be there. The resolution wasn't a perfect ending, it was a real one. I became someone who tells the truth even when it costs me. He became someone who sets boundaries to protect his heart. If you're still listening, here's what I want you to carry with you. One moment can change a life, but it doesn't have to define the rest of it. Accountability is painful, but it's also freeing. Love isn't the absence of mistakes, it's the courage to face them without hiding. On that balcony, I chose fear. Every day after, I've chosen honesty. And that choice, made repeatedly, imperfectly, is what finally taught me what commitment really means.